Morning. Um, I'm here today with Chris Davidson. Chris, good morning. Thanks
Good morning, Mark.
for joining me. Uh, can I first of all ask what you do and for how long you've been doing that?
Yeah. So I help service-based SME businesses get more out of their website. I've been in IT for 40 years,
Wow.
and I started my own company 20 years ago.
20 years.
And in around about 2015, maybe a little before, I started getting some serious earache off colleagues and friends, and having real problems with our website. And I just started getting this undercurrent that it seemed to me that the challenges that people had with websites were getting more serious.
Mm.
But that wasn't statistically significant. So in 2017, I thought I'd better test the marketplace. So I ran a survey in 2017, which proved illuminating. And I thought, okay, so I did that annually. So that became the Worldwide Digital Footprint Survey.
Yeah.
And I've run that annually ever since 2017 was the first. I took 5 years as results in 2020 up to 2021. 2022, I started writing the book. Well, October 21, I started writing the book. October 22, I finished the manuscript.
Wow.
And that book is this one, and it goes live in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Why your website doesn't work.
That's super.
So it's all been focused in on websites. In 2019, I launched a content management system aimed at service-based businesses. Service-based businesses seem to have the challenge more than others in terms of explaining what it is that they do and for whom they do it. And the book and my work is all about really getting that out of people's heads.
Yeah.
And then putting that into an effective technological setup.
Which will, okay, that's
and whether I'm actually helping people with their current websites or building them a new one, I don't really mind which, as long as they end up with something that's effective, that works,
And that book's been published. When's that available?
So that this is the author's proof. It'll be out in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, well done.
So we've just finalized the ebook. It'll be coming out in paper and ebook, and then I'll be recording the audio shortly thereafter. So it will be available, in all formats by the end of February, certainly, but it'll be out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So it encapsulates a number of years.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's as I kind of summarize it, it's 40,000 words, near enough, 40,000 words in 40 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Can I ask, when you think of success, who's the first person that springs to mind, and why?
Yeah, there are two, Michael Dell and Bruce Springsteen.
Okay. Very different.
And their autobiographies are extraordinarily well written, both of them, and they're both worth reading. Michael Dell, just for the man's vision and energy. I mean, he's roughly the same age as I am, roughly. So he got very, very excited in PCs. He's a little bit younger than I am, but not only by a small number of years. And he got very excited in PCs when they were just entering the marketplace. And his vision and drive in creating Dell, and how he managed to build the organization up, take it public, then make it private again, then take over EMC, and I mean, it's just incredible. So if you want to understand more about business success, Michael Dell. Springsteen, because of his absolute dedication to professionalism and his craft. I mean, that man overcame all manner of challenges in his life. He stuck to his craft,
Mm.
knew what he was good at, and stuck to it. And he is one of the very few. ABBA are another, but there are not many artists out there who manage to keep hold of all of their intellectual property. Now, until Springsteen sold out recently to Sony, he made the decision to do that. But up until that point, Springsteen owned all of his intellectual property.
Wow.
Every single song, every note, which is remarkable. And I use that as inspiration for me. In that the book that I talked about, that all belongs to me. I'm driving the publication of that. No publisher involved. I've assembled the team that I need in terms of expertise of book cover designers, internal designers. I've hired the best editors from New York, and then created the whole thing from scratch. So there's no argument over who owns it. I do.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I think ownership is very important. So those two people, Michael Dell and Springsteen. Yeah.
And as an avid reader, thank you very much, because you've added 2 books onto.
Oh, they're terrific.
So
they are both terrific books. Absolutely. I think Springsteen's is Born to Run or something like that, and Michael Dell's is Play Nice But Win or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, Chris. Thank you for that. We've all recently come out of COVID-19, which has been a very interesting challenge for all businesses.
Yeah.
What adaptations did you have to make?
Well, by absolute fluke, very few. But that is only because in January 2019, I made a decision to put the entire business online, lock, stock, and barrel.
Oh.
Having no idea as to what would happen in a year's time. So 2019 was a challenging year for me because I was rebuilding the business online.
Yeah.
When everything got difficult in 2020, I just carried on. So, COVID didn't really impact me anything like as much as it impacted other people.
Yeah, to some degree.
But that was fluke. That was just luck. It was just luck.
But you were ahead slightly of the curve, weren't you?
I was ahead. Just by luck, I was ahead of the curve. And if one puts to one side the tragic circumstance, the tragic personal circumstances associated with the pandemic, and just looks at it from a business perspective, then I think what we can say is that a lot of what has happened was going to happen in this decade anyway. It's just that it happened in 18 months.
Accelerated everything. Absolutely.
It accelerated everything, and it caught people out, and some people were able to get through it easier than others. And there we go. That's the learning point from that. But those people that have survived the pandemic from a business perspective, those organizations that have survived are in a better position, and they will now come, I think, to realize that it's one of the things that Michael Dell says in his book, which I wholeheartedly agree with. The rate of change is only going to accelerate. This is not going to slow down.
Yeah.
It's not going to go back the way it was. So unusually, in this month, we're recording this towards the end of January, and I've been in London twice this month. And I remarked to my colleagues and friends when I got home on both occasions, London's empty. There's nobody there.
Nobody's there now.
There's nobody.
I noticed the same thing.
The roads are empty.
Yeah.
There's nobody there. It's like and you're kind of thinking, well, is anybody working? Well, they are, clearly, but this whole COVID pandemic has completely forever changed how the vast majority of businesses will work. Certainly for me, service-based businesses, for my clients. Yes, of course, I understand, where you have factories and what have you, it's a different game. I get that. But even there, you will have organizations that are working in a hybrid way and with remote staff and what have you. And quite how that is all going to be managed is really going to be quite interesting, I think. It's going to be quite a challenge for everybody.
Yeah. As you say, it's that constant change, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, but I think that rate of change, having accelerated dramatically through the COVID pandemic, I don't think we should imagine that it's going to go back to the way it was. It's not, and I think the rate of change is going to accelerate more. And I think that's going to be challenging for everybody.
Can I ask, in your 20+ years as a business owner, and many years of experience of your career in general, what's some of the biggest learnings you've had, Chris?
You can't do it all alone. I think that's very important. And I think there is a conflict that you have to keep balanced between the necessity for process that just makes things work, allied with the need, ever more greater need, to be adaptable and flexible. And we've just seen that, haven't we? We've just seen that in terms of going back briefly to the whole pandemic thing, the adaptability of organizations and the people within them is what has got people through. But underpinning all of that, there has to be some processes involved in that. So those are the learning points for me. You can't do it all alone. You've got to have people around you, and those people have got to be better than you. You've got to get the best people around you, and they've got to be better than you.
Yeah. And it's brave to do that. But great advice.
In writing the book, I wrote just as a very sort of simple example. It's almost a trivial example, but it serves the purpose. I wrote the first 27,000 words, shipped them off to the editor that I had contracted with in New York. That was April of 22, beg its pardon, April 22. And she wrote me an excoriating 4.5-page review of my first 27,000 words. It looked like a murder scene when it came back, right? I've never seen so much red ink. And I thought, okay. So I said, look, all right, this is only the first 27,000 words of something that I predict is going to be around about 45,000. It ended up at 40. This is what you do for a living. So based on books that you have seen that are at this point in their creative journey, give me a score out of 10. And she's a perfectly reasonable question. 6, 7.
Okay.
So she said, I've worked on books that should never, ever have been published. They just should not have seen the light of day. Yours is not one of them. But there's work to be done here. Okay, fair enough. So that resulted in me throwing away 10,000 words. So from the 27,000, I went down to 17,000 and started all over again and restructured and what have you. But my point there is that, was that editor a top flight editor. Absolutely. I mean, she has edited business books that you and I would know the names of, you know. So I went straight to the top of the tree and I said, okay, I like this book, Built to Sell. Actually, was one of the books she's edited, and I thought, well, that's a good book. I like that. Found out the name of the editor, got in touch, and said, look, if you edited that, I'd like you to edit mine.
Yeah.
So you need to go to the top people. You need to get hold of the top people, just like you would do if you were putting together a top class football team or any other team.
Great advice. Thank you for that. Chris, in the next 5 years, what are your plans for the business?
The book that is just coming out is the first in a collection of 3. And they're all focused around websites, making websites more efficient and more effective. This first book is not just a book. It has an online assessment behind it, and then it has a tool that people can download, that readers can download and use along with the book to make their websites better. So I'm going to keep that model going, having established it. The next book in the series will be just a fairly straightforward book, and that's going to be about websites for non-IT people, websites for non-IT managers, because everybody out there who is involved in a business but doesn't have an IT background, the fact of the matter is they can't escape it. You can't turn anywhere in a modern business, especially a post-pandemic business, without bumping into the firm's website, whether it's internally as an employee or externally as a client. So the tentacles of the websites are going to be everywhere in a business. And so wherever you are in that business, you need to be able to have intelligent conversations with colleagues about the website. So that's the second book. The third book then says, well, okay, hang on a minute. We've got owners of SME businesses who clock onto this fact, go, all right, I better sort my website out. Then I better organize a new website or organize an upgrade or whatever. So I'm going to have to write a specification for that and get it out on the streets. Oh, how in heaven's name do I write a specification for a website? Which is part of the problem. And that's why there are so many dreadful websites out there, because business owners haven't known how to ask for what they needed. They've not been able to articulate their requirements clearly. And therefore the suppliers, I'm not saying the suppliers have taken advantage of that, they haven't, but the suppliers have not been able to respond to a rather too vague set of instructions, and it ends up with nobody being happy. You know, it's like a builder building a house on the basis of some rough ideas that you sketch on the back of an envelope, as distinct from, hello, here's the architect's plans. So the house owner ends up unhappy because they don't get what they want, but they weren't clear on what they wanted in the first place because they didn't really know. And the builder ends up unhappy because they're run to the wall with last minute changes and all the rest of it. So their profit margin disappears and everybody just ends up unhappy. So, you know, we have to be able to sort that out if all the SME businesses are going to survive the third decade of the 21st century with a website that is actually going to help them instead of hindering their business.
Okay, thank you. What are your thoughts on the current employment situation in the Wirral Liverpool region?
It's a good question. I'm actually quite positive about it. For a maybe I'm kind of dreaming a bit about this. You know, maybe this will not turn out to be the case, but I'd like to be positive when I can be.
Mm.
And my view is that for a lot of people, they will now be able to unlock opportunities for working for an organization that ordinarily would have been elsewhere.
Mm.
They'll be able to do the job here because they'll be able to doing it remotely. Now, this does not work if you are working for Camel Laird's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're building a ship at Camel Laird's, well, you've got to be at Camel Laird's building a ship.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that. So it's not going, it's not going to work for the factories at Ellesmere Port and what have you. It's not going to work for everyone. I get that. It's not going to work for Fords in Halewood. I get that. So that there are difficulties there, but for other people, there are opportunities. So there was a young man who used to work for me. He got interested in organic SEO, organic search engine optimization, and excuse me, left me to pursue that career elsewhere. And I'm still in touch with him. We stay in touch, and he lives locally, down your neck of the woods, down Chester way, and he has secured himself an outstanding position, still in SEO management with a big company in Manchester.
Yeah.
But there is no requirement for him to sit on the M56 in a queue getting in and out of Manchester all the time. He doesn't have to do it because the job does not require him to do it. He can work from home most of the time, go into the office every now and then for team meetings and the like. So I think that there are those sorts of opportunities are there. So that's the upside of where we are. Challenges will remain for people who absolutely need to be in the manufacturing sector, need to be in and in hospitality. That's tough. That's a tough gig.
And do you find that people are looking for different types of benefits now in their employment? I mean, you mentioned obviously the hybrid working, but holidays is becoming more prevalent, isn't it? Not necessarily having given more holidays, but the ability to have more holidays.
Yes, yes, it is. And I think that where you can do this, obviously, well, I say obviously, maybe it's not obvious. It's obvious to me that obviously one should do this. I started my career 40 odd years ago working for IBM down in London. And there was an organization that paid me for 37.5 hours a week, me and my colleagues. There wasn't one of us that did 37.5 hours a week. It just did not happen.
Right.
Everybody overworked in terms of hours and in terms of what they had to do. But that meant that, I need to go to the dentist tomorrow morning. Well, you don't take half a day off work or any of that nonsense. You just go to the dentist.
Yeah.
Get it done. Now that was there in the 1980s. So if that sort of, whatever you want to call it, horse trading, common sense, whatever, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to put on it, that has been in existence for decades. It has, because I was there, part of it. Now, if we need to formalize that, okay, feel free to formalize it. I'm not sure whether we need to or not, but at least we can recognize that it's there and just deal with it appropriately.
Very good. So other than you've already raised the point about employing people who have better skills or different skills from yourself and the adaptability. Are there any other learnings through your career, Chris, on employment of people?
Employment of people specifically. Okay. I have been impressed by some of the young people that I've taken on. Really impressed by their adaptability. So I would say that if you were a young person today, then learn what I would call adaptable skills. What might they be? Learn how to express yourself well, vocally, and also in the written word. People who write well will get jobs.
Yeah.
This is important. People who speak well will get jobs. You know, we have just in the past, in this recent past, haven't we? You know, Jacinda Ardern has just thrown the towel in, said, I've done my bit. I'm stepping aside. Now, people will have different political views of Jacinda Ardern, and that's fine. That's what the nature of politics. And people will say, well, yeah, but, you know, New Zealand's a small country. Anybody could run that. Oh, yeah, it's easy because, you know, they could isolate themselves from COVID easily because they were thousands of miles away from everyone else. I take all that. I take all that.
Yeah.
However, nobody can take away from Jacinda Ardern the fact that she is an exceptional communicator. End of.
Yeah.
End of. Right? This is important. So the ability to communicate well, both vocally, but also in writing. Right. The written word is phenomenally important. More so now that we enter the rather hyper-focused world of social media. So those are two things that I would focus on if I was a youngster: written communication, vocal communication. These are important.
Thank you. Very good. And final question, going back to youth again, going back to your 18-year-old Chris, what advice would you give yourself?
Had I known what was going to happen then. Now, I mean, I was lucky in that I did get into IT early. Yeah. You know, that was a fluke. I think if I had known that what was going to happen there, I would have said to my 18-year-old self there to have got into IT even quicker. Like, I'm not saying I would have been another Michael Dell, but the rate at which Michael Dell threw himself into IT is quite remarkable. Now, that opportunity exists for 18-year-olds in this country right now.
Yeah.
And the sector there is online gaming. So if you are a teenager and you are interested in online games and you live in the UK, that means you are a native English speaker. B, you are living in the country that exports the most online games and what have you. So our export market for the creativity of online games, we lead the world. So there is a massive industry there that you can walk straight into, get yourself, and it's an industry that needs everything. It needs creative people to do the design on the screen.
Yeah.
It needs coders, obviously, and developers and IT people and all the rest of it. It needs marketing people. It needs sales people. It needs people to write manuals to explain how stuff works. It needs support people. It needs everything. So there's everything in the online gaming industry is there. If I were an 18-year-old today, there are two places I'd go. That's one. The other industry that is going to expand is power distribution.
Yeah.
So the distribution of electricity, because our grid is going to have to be rebuilt by the next generation, not by me, but my nephews are going to have to rebuild the grid.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have to deal with more nuclear power. We're going to have to deal with more local generation of power. How we distribute that across the grid is a massive engineering problem.
Yeah.
So if you're in engineering, then go for power distribution. Those are my two tips to 18-year-old people today.
So spotting the opportunity and going for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure, Mark. My pleasure.
Incredibly illuminating and educating. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.